What's on your mind? To find out what was on the mind of their University of Nevada, Las Vegas students, researchers gave them beepers. On half a dozen occasions, a beep interrupted a student's daily activities, signaling them to pull out a notebook and record their inner experience at that moment. When the researchers later coded the reports in categories, they found 5 common forms of inner experience: culture, climate, and the pace of life. Naturalistic observations also enabled researchers to compare the pace of life in 31 countries. Their conclusion is life is fastest paced in Japan and Western Europe. The slower paced is economically less developed countries. People in colder climates also tend to live in faster pace. Naturalistic observation offers interesting snapshots of everyday life, but it does so without controlling for all variables that may influence behavior. It's one thing to observe the pace of life in various places, but another to understand what makes some people walk faster than others. The survey. A survey looks at many cases in less depth. Researchers do surveys when wanting to estimate a form from a representative sample of people. The attitudes or reported behaviors of a whole population. Questions about everything from cell phone use to political opinions are put to the public in recent surveys. Half of all Americans reported experiencing more happiness and enjoyment than worry and stress on the previous day. Online Canadians reported using new forms of electronic communications and thus receiving 35% fewer emails in 2010 than 2018. 1 in 5 people across 22 countries reported believing that alien beings have come to Earth and now walk among us disguised as humans. 68% of all humans, some 4.6 billion, say that religion is important in their daily lives. But asking questions is tricky, and the answer often depend on the way questions are worded and respondents are chosen. Wording effects. As we will see in Module 35, even subtle changes in order or wording of the question, the way we frame a question, can have major effects. People are much more approving of aid and needy than the welfare, of affirmative action than of preferential treatment, of not allowing televised cigarette ads and then of censoring them, of revenue enhancers than of taxes. In 2009, 3 in 4 Americans in one national survey approved of giving people a choice of public, government-run, or private health insurance. Yet, in another survey, most Americans were not in favor of creating a public health care plan administered by federal government and that would compete directly with private health insurance companies. Because wording is such a delicate matter, critical thinkers will reflect on how phrasing a question might affect people's expressed opinions. In everyday thinking, we tend to generalize. From samples, we observe especially vivid cases. Given statistically summary of auto owners evaluating their car make in the vivid comments of biased sample, 2 frustrated owners, our impressions may be influenced as much by 2 unhappy owners by the many more evaluations in statistics summary. The temptation to ignore the sampling bias and generalize from a few vivid but unrepresentative cases is nearly irresistible. The point to remember: the best bias for generalizing is from representative sample, but it is not always possible to survey everyone in a group. So how do you obtain representative sample? Say, of students at your high school? How could you choose a group that would represent the total student population, the whole group you want to study and describe. Typically, you would seek a random sample in which every person in the entire group has an equal chance of participating. You might number the names in the general student listing and then use a random number generator to pick your survey participants. Large representative samples are better than small ones, but small representative samples of 100 is better than unrepresentative samples of 500. Political pollsters sample voters in national election surveys just this way, using only 1,500 randomly sampled people drawn from all areas of the country. They can provide a remarkably accurate snapshot of the nation's opinions without random sampling. Large samples including call-in phone samples and TV or website polls, often merely give misleading results. The point to remember: before accepting survey findings, think critically. Consider the sample. You cannot compensate for an unrepresentative sample by simply adding more people.